Nolan and Bailey's honeymoon becomes more of a nightmare than a dream in Trouble in Paradise. The third episode of The Rookie Season 6, as it transforms into an active crime scene. Tim and Selina team up in the interim and have to figure out who the John Doe is. The primary cast of The Rookie is its main source of strength, and everyone gets some breathing room at Nolan and Bailey's wedding reception. Characters were able to reflect on how deeply their past traumas had affected them and how they are feeling now during this little period of time off the clock. Since the entire show focused on Nolan and Bailey's wedding day, it seems appropriate to discuss their poignant vows. But even with their entertainment value and compatibility, Tim and Lucy had the most developed romance in the entire series. Officer John Nolan went on a honeymoon with his beautiful new bride. They reserved an opulent villa in a tropical location. Because the hotel utilized AI images to sell their rooms, the property was a little on the dated side. The hotel was losing money following the previous hurricanes, and they believed that outright deception would aid in their recovery. For the most part, it didn't work, but for Nolan, it did. It was he who made the villa reservation. When they started hearing strange noises, he also had to apologize to Bailey. Possums, the hotel owner said, it can be a mating or killing sound, he suggested. All he knew for certain was that it was possums. Furthermore, the couple didn't need to worry about anything. The couple made an effort to see the silver lining. Nolan invested heavily in cameras. For snorkeling, there was an underwater camera. For ziplining, there was a head camera. Bailey was even using her phone to record everything. They were ready for anything that could come their way. This ultimately prevented them from dying. Nolan eventually found himself in need of a security camera for a man who made him uneasy. Nolan met this guy with bandages all over his face. He considered it strange that the man on the hotel beach had a bandaged face. Later on, he made his introduction. The second man introduced himself as Dean. His wife tried her hardest to persuade him to give up on the mystery, since he believed Dean was concealing something. They had just returned from their honeymoon. They arranged a ton of entertaining activities. She didn't give a damn why a guy would have undergone extensive plastic surgery and then recuperated at a cheap hotel. Bailey was prepared to give up. Still, Nolan thought it would be a good idea to set up their room cam for the night. Additionally, the night cam revealed that someone had visited their room late at night. Nolan thought it was this Dean. Bailey speculated that staff members might have been examining the ground. They were still both really spooked. They were prepared to leave the lodging. They intended to attempt a different honeymoon destination. Even more, Nolan pledged to locate them a fun spot that would be the most boring place on the planet. The one issue with departing was this: the ferry wasn't there. Wi-Fi and electricity were inconsistent, as was the ferry timetable. They were stranded on this nameless island because there was no method for them to contact for assistance if they truly got into danger. Meanwhile, everyone at home was coping with Nolan's problem. Nolan was an officer in training. His training had just been in a stressful circumstance and was new to the LAPD. She saw a fellow officer and friend get shot. The city was placed under lockdown. After her injuries heals, she resumes her job, but not before defying authority in an attempt to win over Detective Harper. When Aaron returned, so much focus was on him that it was easy to forget Selina was also struggling with PTSD. People are currently working to remedy that. For a shift, Officer Selina Juarez had to ride alongside Sergeant Bradford. It was his responsibility to watch over her. He also had some ground rules because he was assisting Officer Chen with her exam preparation. They were not allowed to talk about astrology or their star charts in his car. Bradford also put his foot down when they attempted to talk about the awkward moment between Selina and Aaron at their wedding. He had no desire to hear rumors. Selina needed training while Nolan was away on his wedding, so he filled in. A small amount of light, stolen from a convenience store, prompted the three of them to react. Their suspect remained at that location. He had cuts on his head and arm, both of which were gushing. He asserted that he was unaware of his identity or his past. He continued to wear his ID badge. He was introduced to Bradford as Jonathan Knight. In addition, he didn't accept the man's claim that he was unable to recall anything. When Jonathan began throwing up all over the place, they were compelled to take him to the hospital. It took him some time to realize that he was a spy and that his buddy was in danger. There was nothing more that Jonathan could recall. Bradford continued to believe the man was lying. Chen was the only one who mentioned that his suspicion that his spouse was having problems had any merit. Bradford stated that if Jonathan was a spy, his credentials would have been checked by someone. Chen eventually finished her exam as a detective. They advanced it. When she arrived, she discovered that there was a line and that she would have to wait hours to take the test. What was going to kill her was the waiting. After Harper and Lopes went south, Bradford had to get Selina a second shift. After he and his new bride discovered a body washed up on the beach, Nolan called them. They had erratic cell reception. They could only communicate the terms dead body and suspect to their friends. Nolan thought Dean was the murderer. When he left Bailey alone, he was attempting to do his own investigation. She was taken hostage. Nolan had vanished. On a tropical island, the investigators arrived upon hearing screaming. Thankfully, they had brought their weapons with them, and they were pointing them out as they dashed into danger. They located the security cameras owned by Nolan, the ones he placed in Dean's room. When his gun happened to backfire, Dean intended to kill every one of his victims, so he took them back there. The motel owner had been murdered by Dean. If the gun hadn't backfired, he would have killed Bailey, Nolan, and the man's daughter. Nolan made use of that opportunity to throw off his constraints. He challenged Dean. In hand-to-hand battle, he managed to defeat him. They were all about to be evacuated off the island, and everything was under control until the investigators arrived. Dean had killed his girlfriend in the United States. Plastic surgery was used to cover his face. When Nolan unintentionally suspected him when he was recuperating on the island, Dean discovered he was a police officer. Dean believed that his victims were still with him. He started murdering people. Before he could hurt anyone else, he was stopped. And now he is going to serve time in 2 different courts. When Bradford and Selina returned home, they discovered Jonathan's partner. The man was wedged between 2 walls. He drank his own pee because he was so desperate. Roger was Jonathan's true name, he claimed. They became stuck in a wall while attempting a foolish action. Roger managed to escape. Now that he got his pal help, they will both make it out alive. Chen's interview was a failure. She was eventually placed last on the list of prospective detectives. Before she is placed someplace, she will have to wait years. Chen was therefore considering her next steps in her profession. The honeymoon shenanigans and the outcome of Lucy Chen's eagerly awaited detective exam provided some lighthearted moments in this show, but overall it was a subdued hour. Furthermore, the plot barely advanced at all. Among the most notable aspects of John Nolan and Bailey's honeymoon was the amazing camera work that showed the different types of surveillance Nolan had taken with him. When this show experiments with cinematography and other elements, I adore it. It was hilarious to see how imaginatively they captured each type of camera, from the pin camera to the night vision, and how thrilled Nolan was with the waterproof one. The inventiveness and tactics used in this series are excellent. Not surprisingly, Nolan and Bailey were unable to enjoy a typical and enjoyable honeymoon. The resort was nothing like what they had been told in the brochures, and they knew things would become worse after they met the enigmatic man with the bandaged face. Has there ever been an outing outside of their house that Nolan and Bailey went on that didn't turn disastrous or put their lives in danger? It would have been good to watch Nolan defeat Bailey in kayaking after hearing for a few seasons that there is almost nothing the newlyweds can accomplish. We hardly saw the newlyweds having fun.